As I understand the mission of the search committee, it is not to zero in on one candidate and recommend to the board that he be employed or she be employed. Is that correct?
This is correct. The chairman of the board, Governor James, made it quite clear, and this is consistent with the wishes and views of all the board members and certainly of my committee members, that our purpose and function is to go throughout the United States and by whatever means we can devise, identify those people who, in our judgment, are best suited, and then make a recommendation of some number of candidates to the entire board. And it's possible, of course, that the board might choose to look outside the number that we would recommend, but we are not commissioned to go and select an individual and say this individual is the president.
Are you locked in yourself, or do you feel the search committee is that the president, the next president of Auburn, has to be what I would call, quote, an Auburn man, close quote, if you know what I mean by Auburn man, a graduate of Auburn, a product of Auburn?
Sure. No, there's no such criteria spelled out in the commission that's been given to our committee, and we accepted as an article of faith that we are supposed to look for that person who is best equipped. If that person happens to be a graduate of Auburn University, fine. If you had two people and everything else was exactly equal and one was not an Auburn graduate, the odds are you would select an Auburn graduate.
A great deal has been made of the fact that of the 5 members of the search committee, 4 of them are former Auburn football players, one subsequently the coach at Auburn, and then there's the token representative from the academic side, Senator Harris. Is that, respond to that accusation that's being made against you?
Well, that's an outline that's been manufactured by you and your brethren in the news media. You could find other common denominators if you sought to look for them. Excluding myself, I might call attention to the fact that you have one very well-respected United States congressman. He incidentally played football while he was at Auburn. He also, incidentally, was a well-decorated war veteran, but nobody mentions that, you know. We have a man who is highly successful in the contracting business in this state, who's been president of every trade association with which he's connected. Y'all don't mention that. He incidentally played football. We have a man who's...
I'm getting a speech on this.
That's right. That's right. A man who has distinguished himself in the legal field, not me, but another member. We have Coach Jordan, who does have some peculiar credentials in the football area, but that's an outline and a criteria that's been manufactured.
Your interest will be in finding a president who is academically prepared, not just football-minded.
Without any question.
The blanket of air covering the Earth, the atmosphere, is like a sponge. It can absorb water as an invisible vapor, and in a sense, water can be squeezed from the atmosphere to produce clouds or rain or snow. The similarity can be taken a step further. There is a limit to the amount of water which can be held by a sponge, and there's a limit to the amount of water vapor which can collect in the air. Let's say this sponge can hold a cup of water and not a drop more. If a cup of water will saturate or fill the sponge, then a half cup would make the sponge half full, and that's an illustration of relative humidity. Just as the sponge can be half full, the air around us can be half full of water vapor, and in such a case, the relative humidity would be 50%. The relative humidity, then, is the percentage of water vapor in the air in relation to or relative to the maximum amount of water vapor the air can hold at the moment. At the moment is an important distinction because the amount of water vapor the air can hold changes with the temperature. Warm air can hold more water vapor than cold. If you're in an average-sized living room right now, say 15 by 20, and the room temperature is 68 degrees, the air in the room can hold this much water. A shade under 41 ounces turned into vapor would saturate the air in the room, make the room just 7 degrees cooler, and the air in it can hold only a little over a quart. That explains why the relative humidity as reported at 10 p.m. is nearly always higher than the reading at 6 p.m. As the temperature of the outside air has dropped during the evening, the water vapor present comes closer and closer to filling or saturating the air. And finally, have you ever wondered why even when it's raining, weather reporters still say usually that the relative humidity is something less than 100%? You'd think that if water is falling from the air must be saturated. And you'd be right. Rain does fall from saturated air because it falls from clouds where the relative humidity is 100%. The ground level air may be much drier even though rain is falling through it. I'm Dan Atkinson with Weatherbeat.
Yeah, Larry, just pull
Both the
straight
driver
out
of the
ahead
gas
a minute.
tanker and the car involved in the collision claimed they had the green light at the intersection of the Southern Bypass and Norman Bridge Road. The accident spilled several thousand gallons of gasoline which poured into the city's drainage system. Most of the gas evaporated, some soaked into the ground, and even more was sucked up by a gas salvage crew from Birmingham. The skimming was done in a ditch where a dike was built to prevent the gas from flowing into Catoma Creek. What little gas is left is expected to decompose and evaporate. A small amount of gas did make it to Catoma Creek before the dike was built. Officials downstream say they can smell the gas but can't see any of it. Water Improvement Commission workers say some dead fish have been spotted, but add the contamination has been minor. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
You're looking at the #1 college football team in the nation. At least that's the opinion of National Wire Services, and it's a hard viewpoint to argue with. Alabama has a perfect 5-0 record. The team ranks first in the nation in rushing, first in scoring, first in total defense, first in scoring defense, and first in victory margin. How does it feel to be college football kingpins?
We try not to think about it, but, you know, it means a lot. But, you know, we can't, because the polls don't mean nothing, and we just got to go out and play every week to stay there, you know, and that's what the players are going to try to do. We just play every week and stay up there.
Well, like I've said, we try not to think about being #1 because if you do, you get the big head and usually end up losing along the way. So we're going to try to play the games the rest of the year just like we're #3 and #4 and try to stay #1.
I really don't know. It doesn't have any on me, but I'm not playing. I think it makes the opposition want to win more, and I think, of course, if our team, they have pride, like I'm sure they have, well, they would like to keep it, and they know they can't keep the spot unless they win, so it should make it a heck of a football game.
The Tide has little time to savor the #1 ranking. Most of the players say they're more concerned with this weekend's game than last weekend's glory, and they have every right to be concerned. Alabama faces Tennessee, and if you don't think the Volunteers can play solid football, just ask the folks up at Auburn about Mr. Streeter and company. Tennessee is 4-1 this season, is ranked 18th in the nation, and has perhaps the best all-round quarterback in the conference in Jimmy Streeter.
What's it going to take to beat Tennessee?
I don't think we can beat them just on our ability. We're going to have to go out there fired up to beat them. We can't play them like any other team we've played so far. We can't depend on, you know, our strength and toughness to beat them. We're going to have to go out there fired up and mentally ready to play this game to win.
Alabama has worked hard to become the #1 team in the nation, but now it's faced with an even more difficult task. The Tide has to defend that ranking, and they'll start this weekend against Tennessee. Fred Albers, WSFA TV Sports.
The State Department of Industrial Relations is funded almost entirely by the federal government. And that money could be cut off if the state is found to be eventually in violation of federal tax regulations.
In 1976, Congress amended the federal unemployment tax law to allow employees of church-related schools to be taxed. The Lutheran Church in Mobile filed suit to block the collection in Alabama. The suit was successful, and an injunction was issued. The Department of Labor says the state must comply with the regulations anyway. The State Department of Industrial Relations administers the unemployment tax program. George Kokoris, a department attorney, says a federal administrative trial judge in Washington heard the matter and says the state is in compliance with federal law. Kokoris says the Labor Department must accept this ruling. If it does not, then the state could lose, and lose big.
There is a final adverse ruling holding that Alabama has been out of conformity. Then in that event, all funding for the Department of Industrial Relations will cease, and that involves 98%, some 98% of its funding. It would involve the cessation of all CETA operation, cessation of unemployment compensation operations, employment service, discretionary grants. But I guess the harshest impact would probably be felt by the employers of Alabama, who would be subjected to a $200 million loss in tax credits. That is FUTA, F-U-T-A credits.
According to Kokoris, the basic issue is the separation of church and state.
The U.S. Department of Labor has until the end of the month to make its decision. If that decision goes against the state of Alabama, then Governor Fob James has directed the State Department of Industrial Relations to take the matter to the U.S. Supreme Court. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
Losing him, you just, lose your total, leadership on the floor. And we have to find that replacement. And right at this point, I'm not sure we're going to find that replacement in just one individual. We're going to have to get a combination of individuals doing the things that he did to make up for his loss.
You're saying it's very difficult to find a guy with his ability and his stamina, to play as much as he did?
Right, because he'd play almost 40 minutes, and he was a good leader on the floor and he was a good leader off the court, and he meant so much to our ball club.
In Montgomery, the observation included this discussion by several dozen area women interested in nuclear power. Carol Clark, documents manager for the Clinch River Breeder Reactor Project, talked about the nation's energy problem and the role nuclear energy must play. According to Ms. Clark, nuclear energy is available to replace natural gas and oil as a source of electricity. She says the fast breeder reactor, such as the one under construction at Clinch River in Tennessee, produces more fuel than it uses and is therefore a cheap source of electricity. The breeder reactor produces plutonium-239, which is highly toxic and can be used to make bombs. For this reason, Mrs. Clark said President Jimmy Carter is opposed to the breeder reactor.
His objection is because the breeder produces plutonium, and plutonium can be used to make a bomb. But uranium can be used to make a bomb, and there are a lot of other materials that are much easier gotten hold of to produce a bomb than plutonium. But this was his position, and this was what he was going to do. He was going to set an example for the world. Well, I have to tell you that the foreign countries said, that's just fine, America, you go right ahead and do that, but we're going right ahead with our LMFVR programs.
The Soviet Union, France, and Great Britain already have breeder reactors in operation. The United States Clinch River project will not be ready until the mid-1980s. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
It's amazing what a few wins can do for our team's morale. Troy State started the season with a rash of injuries and 2 straight losses. However, those days are long gone. The Trojans have not lost a game in the last month. The record stands at 4-2, and the team meets North Alabama this weekend for the Gulf South Conference lead. How do you account for the sudden upswing in the Trojans' fortunes?
Big difference, I guess, is probably maturity. We had felt at the beginning of the year that our defense probably would be our stronger suit at the beginning. We didn't know that we'd be so depleted injury-wise, offensively at the outset of the season. But our defense has hung in there and played well. And we've been able to get some well people back, and we've been able to do a little bit more consistent job of the offense. We've not been beating ourselves with turnovers, a lot of mental mistakes. We have a couple of quarterbacks, both of whom have had hot hands at times. Some receivers have caught the ball real well.
It will be strength against strength when the Trojans meet North Alabama this weekend. The Troy State defense has not allowed a single point in the last 3 weeks, while North Alabama running back Charles Lawson is averaging more than 111 yards per game. Whoever wins that showdown will have a stranglehold on this year's Gulf South Conference Championship. Fred Albers, WSFA TV Sports.
Put them in 3 cups of boiling water, cook them for 30 minutes, and then press firmly these crumbs into the chicken, and you'll have plenty of crumbs for 2.5 pounds with a kitchen scale anywhere. If you don't have one, they're so handy to have around the house. You can buy one for but sometimes you'll have there's a triple pack, and it's got 3 packages of crumb mixture in the triple pack. And each of the hotel flour ended up and try to go something else. Now, these pieces are already coated. We have exactly 2.5 pounds. Just put them around on the chicken anywhere.
As you walk down the midway, you're tempted by bright lights and inviting prizes. But there's one charm above all others that compels you to stop. The charm of the Barkers song.
A quarter is all it takes to win. Anyone else likes to get in, anyone else likes to do it.
Barkers, Carneys, Criers, you know them by many names, but their songs are the same. They call to potential customers as the sirens wooed Ulysses.
Well, you just have to talk to them, sweetheart. That's all it is. Like, only thing I can say, you know. Tell them, well, you're close, you almost got it, or one person on the other side of the wind, and then they get all excited, and they jump over and give me another $1 right quick, you know. And for change, I got to get me a bear. So that's all it is to it. I mean, you know, the people winning all the time, there are people trucking up and down through here all the time, and everybody's out for excitement, you know, and the thrill of winning right here. And there's nothing to it. You just toss a quarter on the plate, you get your choice of any large animal we have right here. So, you know, you just go for it, something I can say.
There are over 100 Barkers urging you to go for it, but the one who gets your money is the one with the sweetest song, the most alluring line. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News. The movie is a parody of the life of Jesus. The Auburn theater manager calls it a joke. Religious leaders call it sacrilegious. Steve Enzer, an Auburn student and ordained Baptist minister, has helped organize picketers to march in front of the theater as long as the movie runs. He says picketers will carry signs bearing gospel messages. Enzer says he's not trying to keep anyone from seeing the movie. He wants them to read the signs as they come out. Enzer calls the movie contemptible, though he's never seen it.
I've read articles by many members of the press, the things that they've had to say about the movie, a detail-by-detail account of what's in the movie by an individual who saw the movie. I've scanned the synopsis that Python Productions put out themselves about the content of the movie, and I've read articles in Time magazine and others. I feel like I have a very strong basis for knowing what's in the movie.
Is that right?
Well, a lot of times movie reviews are not an individual's opinion. They're not the majority's opinion. That's the way I feel about movie reviews. They don't always, they don't express what everyone thinks about it or what everyone feels.
Do you think it's sacrilegious?
Not the parts I've seen so far.
Tonight in front of this theater there will be protesters walking back and forth. The theater's manager also hopes that with this publicity there will be crowds inside as well. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News, Auburn.
57-year-old Nat Wilkins is totally disabled and now lives off Social Security, and he blames both on his former employer, the West Point Pepperell Mill in Opelika. Wilkins says he's suffering from a combination of chronic bronchitis, emphysema, and bisonosis, which mill workers call brown lung.
It was caused from exposure to heavy concentration of cotton dust where I worked on my job.
Wilkins says he was tested for lung impairment problems by the company in 1972, but it was 1974 before they released any information to him, and even then only confirmed that he had a lung impairment problem, but did not indicate that it could be work-related. After Wilkins was disabled in 1978, he says the company tested him again, but never released the information to him. That report is said to confirm that Wilkinson's disease could be the result of inhaling cotton dust over the years. Wilkins also alleges that other employees suffer similarly. He also says those workers probably suffering from brown lung are directed to seek Social Security benefits instead of workman's compensation. The suit names just about the entire management of West Point Pepperell, both past and present, as defendants, and is the first of its kind. The Southern Poverty Law Center's interest in brown lung isn't ending here. A similar suit is expected to be filed next week against the Burlington Company in Greenville, South Carolina. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News, Opelika.
If we were deficient in revenues by $208 million on an annual basis, we felt that we should start getting those revenues into the company as soon as possible and not delay them on a phased-in rate increase.
What's this going to mean to the average residential customer's bill?
It will mean about $3.40 per 1,000 kilowatt hours. 1,000 kilowatt hours is costing about $47 now.
Monitoring all of that progress that's going on down there. One of the first things we did was to shut down all of our air conditioning equipment in selected buildings on the weekends. And this, we feel, as though saved us approximately $6,000 a month. We've taken other measures to try to let individuals help us conserve energy by shutting off lights when they're not needed and other electrical appliances when they're not needed. And I think it's just a matter of indoctrinating people in these buildings to conserve energy and get them in an energy conservation mood.
The Carver Wolverines could have guessed what kind of night it was going to be from the first play of the game. Alan Evans fields the kickoff on the 17-yard line, gets some tremendous blocking from his wedge, and then it's off to the races. A 68-yard return setting up a Ricky Britt touchdown. Enterprise led 7-0. The Wolverines also proved they could strike lightning fast. Darrell Hobson says, "Look what I found," and takes off toward the end zone. The play covered 58 yards, but the extra point failed and Enterprise led 7-6. A Kenneth Valerie interception set up the Wildcats' next score. Calvin Smith took the ball across from the 7-yard line, 14-6 Enterprise ahead. Carver had trouble with its special team play tonight. Enterprise blocks this punt, and Alan Evans falls on it in the end zone. Touchdown, Enterprise 21, Carver 6. Things were starting to get out of hand, but Enterprise continued to dominate. Quarterback Kevin Maddox found some glory with this 2-yard plunge. And then, just to prove it wasn't a fluke, Mr. Maddox gave an encore performance just before the half ended. Enterprise led 35-6 at intermission. Each team scored once more in the second half. Enterprise beat Carver 42-13. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV Sports.
The steadily improving Generals used the running of Eric Weatherly and the kicking of Roger Self and Robert Davis to subdue the tenacious wishbone of Jess Lanier. This was Weatherly on a 35-yard TD run to put the Generals up by a touchdown. But the Bessemer visitors wouldn't roll over. Ed Jones capped this 50-yard drive with a score, but they missed the point after. 7-6, Lee still slightly ahead. Weatherly's outside running seemed the only way the Lee Generals could move in the first half. This run set up a Roger Self field goal, and it was 10-6 at the half. In the second half, the Generals appeared to slowly take charge, as they have on other occasions this year. But drives were stopped, and on 2 occasions, Roger Self and Robert Davis kicked field goals to build a 16-6 Lee advantage. Self kicks the short ones, Davis anything outside 30 yards. They were 3 for 3 on the night. With just over a minute to go, the visitors made it close on this Willie Moore bomb and a 2-point play to make it 16-14 at the gun. Phil Snow, TV 12 Sports.
This story is about Lane Miller and Blackie. The 9-year-old from Jemison, Alabama began grooming and training the 8-month-old Hereford in September for the Junior Purebred Heifer Show. Even before the judging, Miller and his grandparents, Tommy and Opal Miller, helped with the final touches, while Lane brushed Blackie's coat. Opal washed her hooves, and Tommy gave her a trimming. Then it was time for Blackie and Lane to head for the livestock arena. At 2 recent fairs, Blackie placed very high in the competition. In Clanton, she earned the title of reserve champion in the crossbreed show. And in Birmingham, she took 2nd class. But today would be different. In the showmanship competition, Judge Foster Rhodes of Perry, Georgia, was looking for attentiveness in both animal and owner, and most importantly, in the youngster's ability to show the animal. Once inside the arena, Blackie became nervous, and no matter what Lane did, she was virtually uncontrollable.
She stepped on my foot, and she wouldn't be still, and she kept butting me and turning around and around in circles.
With a poor showing in front of the judge, Blackie did not receive a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd place ribbon.
No.
However, Lane says that with another year of training, the heifer will be one of the top contenders. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News.
Presently, we have buying, receiving, concealing stolen property and grand larceny auto theft warrants against this individual, and we're looking for him in the Montgomery area.
Any additional charges might be forthcoming?
Yes, the Accident Investigation Division is handling the accident part, and more than likely there are going to be charges stemming from the accident which resulted in an injury last night, probably leaving the scene of an accident where injury was involved.
A lot more people are running now, and they are beginning to run with walking. They're starting off walking because people can't just go out and run a mile or 2 at one time. They should walk and then run. And most important thing there is that they made sure that it's fun, and don't make it something you force yourself to do. Run if you enjoy it. Walk when it becomes something you're not enjoying.
What are the benefits of running and walking?
Benefits of running or walking is the conditioning that you give to your body, the experience, everything that you enjoy in life, you're going to enjoy more because the body is going to be more in condition to appreciate.
By the time Montgomery fire units arrived on the scene, this house on Erato Street was well engulfed in flames. 16 firemen equipped with oxygen spent nearly 15 minutes fighting the blaze. According to Captain J.C. Burke, the owner, Chapman Moore, was cleaning the kitchen stove with gasoline. Somehow, it ignited from the hot water heater, and Moore thought he could put it out himself. But after several minutes, the flames were too much. Within minutes after receiving the call, 2 pumpers, 1 ladder truck, and a district chief arrived to coordinate the effort. As soon as one oxygen tank was used up, another was soon in its place, and the firefighter was back inside. Captain Burke estimates the fire caused more than $5,000 in damage to both the house and its contents. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News.
These 3 members of the 217th Military Police Company in Prattville saved the life of this man, Staff Sergeant Virgil W. Peppers. It happened during the 217th summer encampment this last July. Staff Sergeant Peppers says it was at night. He says he was scheduled to get up early the next morning, so he tried to get his name on a wake-up call roster. But to do that, he had to knock on a glass window to attract the attention of the person he needed.
I didn't wake him at first, and I knocked a little harder, and my arm went right through the glass. And at that time, it cut my wrist from up to my hand, almost halfway down to my elbow, and opened up the blood vein, and several liters was laid back. And at that time, I tried to hold the blood back, and I held it until the MPs arrived. At that time, I was on the verge of passing out. I'd lost so much blood.
Doctors say the 3 men applied the tourniquet to the slashed arm only minutes before Peppers could have slipped into an irreversible coma. Because they applied themselves during a critical situation, Private First Class Samuel Steele, Specialist 4 Calvin DeBartoleben, both of Prattville, and Private First Class Larry Hooks of Tuskegee were awarded the Alabama Commendation Medal. The men's wives were on hand as Sergeant Peppers got a chance to thank the 3 for saving his life. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
In addition, we should go forward with nuclear development. And, you know, we have that distinguished man, Dr. Teller, here on your campus today. The Dr. Tellers should be heeded, and those public nuisances, Jane Fonda and Ralph Nader, have got to be ignored by rational people. I mean, they really are public nuisances. The point is that all energy forms have potential dangers. Hundreds of people, again, this year have been killed in coal and gas and oil development. But to date, no one has died as a result of nuclear energy. And we must also keep in mind that it is a clean form of energy and a cheap form of energy, I mean, relative to other forms, so that we should continue to pursue it. And I think with regard to the nuclear waste program, it's equally important to bear in mind that of the total nuclear waste problem, only 3% of that comes from nuclear energy plants. The rest is from the weapons program. And that's an ongoing problem. And the nuclear energy development contributes so inconsequential a fraction of that total problem that to talk about closing down nuclear energy plants or not going forward with the development of others is just downright foolish. The question of national health insurance is out of the question. It's out of the question because of the astronomical price tag on it, but beyond that, as I've asked people before, why would anyone in his right mind entrust anything so precious as his health or the health of a loved one to the same people that gave us Amtrak and the post office? You know, we know that the government does nothing well. I mean, that's a self-evident truth. And that being the case, then, if one wants to examine Kennedy Corman in operation, look at the American Indian. You know, he's always been the beneficiary of the federal government. The most appalling health care statistics you find of any group exists with the American Indian, and he's always been the responsibility of the feds.
The blaze at the Royal Doghouse began around 6:30 this morning. 8 fire units and 40 firemen fought the blaze for about 45 minutes before bringing it under control. 2 firemen, Chief Jim Sutherland and Captain Frank Ray, received minor injuries fighting the blaze. The inside of the restaurant was gutted by the fire. The roof is almost completely gone. A uniform shop next door to the restaurant sustained heavy smoke damage, but no damage from the fire itself. Montgomery fire inspectors say the restaurant was burglarized and the fire was set in the attic to cover up the burglary. The Montgomery Police Department is assisting the fire department in the investigation, and authorities are hoping to make an arrest soon. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News.
Just kind of touring around.
No, I'll be specifically monitoring and visiting some of these agricultural projects that our denomination knows that people's stomachs and the joint effort in helping to solve some of these.
What are we talking about?
We're talking about projects that would be designed to grow food, produce better food, or it might be fish. We have a fish development project, for example, where people are learning through modern science to grow fish in ponds.
But it's helping people help themselves.
Helping people help themselves.
A federal suit filed against Sears Roebuck & Company was filed in Montgomery and 4 other cities. The suit filed in U.S. District Court by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission accuses the store of discrimination on the basis of race and national origin. The commission's suit seeks an injunction preventing any further discrimination and asks for back pay for anyone who might have been hurt by the alleged discrimination. The injunction also calls for Sears to establish affirmative action programs to enhance the job opportunities to women and minorities. In Chicago, Sears officials say they welcome the opportunity to fair hearings before the court and claim they are not guilty of discrimination. 6 years ago, the Employment Opportunity Commission's former chairman charged Sears of broad patterns of discrimination against women employees and job applicants. There's been no comment from the local Sears store in Montgomery. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Jesse Bishop didn't try to get a stay of execution. He said his life of violent crimes was leading to this end. So, just after midnight, he was killed in the gas chamber in Carson City, Nevada. The American Civil Liberties Union tried to stop the execution, but a Supreme Court justice denied the appeal. Mary Weidler of the American Civil Liberties Union in Montgomery says more than 40 persons are on death row in Alabama.
I think it's very depressing for all of those people because, you know, what else can you think about? But there goes, you know, one of your brothers, so to speak. I just think it's an incredibly awful thing. It just diminishes all of us to have the state actually killing people.
Ms. Weiler says more and more states have passed death penalty laws recently, possibly indicating a trend toward capital punishment. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Selection of the 12 jurors and 2 alternates took several hours. Then the state and defense made opening statements. District Attorney Jimmy Evans, who is prosecuting the case, told the jury that evidence will show Adams began a conspiratorial relationship with Montgomery architect Carl Herbert Lancaster. One of the indictments charges Adams with perjury when he said he did not receive kickbacks from Lancaster. Evans also says there have been continual investigations into charges of bribery of public officials, charges of using public office for private gain, and charges of violation of the State Ethics Act. Evans says there will be questions asked at this trial which have never been asked in an Alabama court before. Richard Jordan, one of Adams' attorneys, told the jury this was a unique case because it involves perjury and a public official. According to Jordan, the prosecution of Adams was stimulated by the Montgomery Advertiser Alabama Journal. Furthermore, Jordan says the trial involves, quote, a group of greedy, corrupt businessmen. The first state's witness called testified about grand jury records at the time Hugh Adams was called to testify. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News. Adams is charged with lying to the grand jury when he said he did not receive kickbacks from a Montgomery architect, Carl Lancaster. The first 3 witnesses called by District Attorney Jimmy Evans answered questions relating to the grand jury and the State Building Commission. State Budget Officer James Rayford, who is also the Secretary of the Building Commission, testified it was not the duty of the Executive Director of the Building Commission to approve or award architectural contracts. Evans produced a contract between the state and Carl Lancaster for architectural services. What appeared to be the signatures of former Governor George Wallace, Carl Lancaster, and Hugh Adams were on that contract. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.